Okay, so where am I? Where am I? Hi, everybody. I'm Skip Alsheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show. And behind me is Miles. Miles is leaving. This is today his last day. How long have you worked with us?
I started in May of 2023, so a little over a year.
Wow. Okay. And this man has held and carried more films from the AV Geeks collection than anybody, including myself, I think. Although yeah. You carried a lot, and so I decided it's his last day for him to curate what we're gonna watch, and he put everything on this big reel over here. You can see on the scanner. So what are we going to watch?
So starting off, our first one, we're starting with a short film called Heat for Beginners. There's not really a whole lot I can say because I feel like the film will explain it pretty well, but 1995, crime masterpiece, Robert De Niro, Al Pacino. It's a film that means a lot to me. Quite a bit to me, so I feel like this short film we're about to watch will really go into it well, but let's let the film do the talking.
So you think this is a primer for that Michael Mann crime drama?
Oh, absolutely. That's why I picked it.
All right, here we go. Heat for Beginners. Enjoy.
The sun is hot. It gives off heat. Can you think of other things that give off heat? We know some things that give off heat, don't we? But how do we know? That's one way of telling, isn't it? We can tell by how heat feels. Can you think of another way of telling when something gives off heat? We can boil water with heat. What about heat from the sun? Is there a way of boiling water with heat from the sun? Perhaps if we focus the sunlight with a magnifying glass. Heat from the sun boils water. With some ice, frozen water, and some other heated water, we can learn about something else heat does. What happens as the heated water is poured on the ice? Heat passes from the hot water to the cold ice. The hot water becomes cooler. The ice becomes warmer and melts. Can you think of other things that melt when they're heated? making things melt. This is a way heat changes things. What will happen to the melted wax when it cools? It becomes hard once again. Here's a solid piece of lead, a kind of metal. Can it be melted too? It takes a lot of heat to melt lead. Now we're pouring the melted lead into a mold. What do you suppose will happen to the lead inside the mold? Now the lead is cooler. It has formed tiny figures, figures of solid lead. Lead, like other materials we've seen, becomes a liquid when heated, then becomes a solid once again when cooled. What other things happen to solids when they're heated? We can find out with a solid aluminum rod with a balloon near one end. The balloon is almost touching the end of the rod, which has a sharp point. If the rod were longer, it would break the balloon. What might cause the rod to get longer, to expand? Will heat do it? Heat made the metal expand. What about a liquid? Will the liquid in this flask expand when heated? The liquid rises into the tube. The liquid expands when heated. Now, watch as heating stops. The liquid goes back down again, doesn't it? As the liquid cools, it shrinks back into the flask, the way it was before it was heated. What about gases? Gases that make up air. There is air in the bottle and air in the plastic bag. Will air expand when heated? Air expands when it's heated. What about when it's cooled? The air goes back to the way it was. A marshmallow shows us another way heat changes things. Will the marshmallow ever change back to the way it was before it was cooked? You've probably seen heat used to make popcorn. Will the popped corn ever change back to the way it was before it was popped? What about some eggs when they're heated? Will they ever change back to raw eggs again? Now, let's think about something else. How heat gets to the eggs. Through the metal pan. How fast does heat pass through metal? We'll do an experiment with a piece of metal and a pad of soft material, the same thickness as the metal. Will heat pass through the soft pad as quickly as through the metal? Let's find out. On top of each, we'll place a glass dish. And in each dish, an ice cube. Heat passes very quickly through the metal, melting the ice cube. The metal is a conductor of heat. The ice cube on the pad isn't melting as fast. It takes much longer for heat to pass through the pad of soft material. It's a kind of insulation. We wouldn't use insulation to make a frying pan. We use a conductor. Metal conducts heat quickly to all parts of the pan, including the handle. There's a danger of getting burned if we grab the handle directly. A pad made of insulating fabric protects our hand. Can you think of other insulating materials we use? Gloves insulate our hands from the cold. Another use of insulation is in the walls of a house. Insulation is placed in walls of many homes when they're built. On hot summer days, insulation keeps heat from moving into a house, keeping it cool inside. In the winter, insulation keeps heat from moving out of the house, keeping it warm inside. Can you see how insulation might make a home more comfortable? Can you think of some other uses for insulation? It helps to know which things are heat insulators and which things are heat conductors. What else can you remember about heat? What are some ways heat changes things? What things give off heat? How much can you remember about heat and what it does?
So I'm a little confused, Miles. I'm a little confused. Since when did the heat that is on your cell phone case come out?
95.
And this film came out in the 70s?
Yeah, yeah. No, it was very, the music is a lot different than I remember that's in Heat. Also, there was no shooting, so that was weird, or men looking out into the ocean, or a
Right.
scene in a diner. Yeah, that was actually very different, but I learned a lot.
Okay. Do you think that the Michael Mann Heat is a reimagining of Heat for Beginners?
I do. You can definitely feel the, you can feel it. You can just feel it.
All right. Somebody asked if you're going to be at the live show that I'm doing tonight.
Fortunately, no. I'll be packing.
You'll be packing, leaving the country.
Yes.
We've driven him out of the country.
Yes.
What is this next film we're going to see?
This next film and the film after are dedicated to my wonderful girlfriend Caitlin. This next film, I believe, is called The Bear and the Hunter. My girlfriend Caitlin, she loves bears. She loves bears, so I saw this and I was like, all right.
I mean, there's a possibility that a bear might be injured in this film.
I did think of that. But I'm hoping that he beats the hunter. So.
Wow. You were just setting yourself up, man. All right. Okay. Here's a Bear and the Hunter. Enjoy.
It's a May night in northern Lapland. It's the first night this year when there hasn't been a frost. The snow is melting and the forest streams are swollen. Everywhere there are signs of the coming spring. The night is calm and quiet, and yet it is filled with sounds and movements that tell of the coming of spring. The pygmy owl already has a nest filled with hungry young birds. And the wood mouse, too, is hungry. It must leave its burrow to hunt for food. It senses danger and doesn't dare go too far away. This is a tiny meal for the bear, although this meal would have been more than enough for the owl. It's the bear's first night awake after his long winter sleep. He's hungry and he's looking for food. He's come down from the hills to a strange part of the forest where he seldom hunts. Spring is bringing new life to all the forest. The sap in the birch trees gives new brightness to the shining bark. The buds are swelling, even under the winter ice. Here, at the foot of the mountains, are the mossy forests. This is the home of the jaybird. The baby jaybirds were born before the snow began to melt, and now they'll soon be ready to leave their nest. These noisy youngsters are the loudest messengers of spring. Here the grouse are courting each other with their gentle calls. But not all the calls come from the grouse. This little boy is the son of Anand, the hunter. Anand has been snaring grouse all winter long, and his son has learned how to call them. Someday, this boy will be a great hunter too, like his father. The bear has found an ant's nest. He's still trying to satisfy his winter hunger. He doesn't know that Anand, the mighty hunter, is setting out to find him. There are many warnings that come to the bear. His keen senses tell him of danger, and he heads back for the safety of the high hills. All day long, Anand follows the bear's trail. He isn't going to give up. It's been a hard winter for Anand, and this bear might provide meat for his family and a furry skin to keep his children warm. It's the dog's turn now to try to stop the bear before he gets across the stream. But the river can't stop Anand, and neither can the dark of night. As long as he has his dog to lead him to the bear. At last, the dog's barking tells Anand that the bear has been cornered. But wait. The bear has struck back. The dog is hurt. And now Anand has lost track of the bear. It could be anywhere around him. Fear strikes his heart, for he knows that he is helpless in the forest night. He doesn't know what animals may be threatening him in the darkness. The morning is quiet and serene in the forest. It seems as if the chase of the night before had never happened. The bear has left behind him only his tracks in the snow. He is far up in the hills now, safe from the hunter, safe to go on in his search for food. This is his land. Here, high up in the mountain forests, far away from the danger of Anand the hunter.
All right, I was a little nervous there, Miles. A little nervous. I was afraid it was going to go bad, but
too.
it didn't.
Me too. Me too. Me too.
Then that narrator, in my mind, sounded a little like a Peter Thomas type character. Peter Thomas, of course, narrated Forensic Files, and was also featured in Paul Hardcastle's 19 song, and also all the Your Chance to Live films he narrates and actually appears in one. So I was like, I wonder if that's Peter Thomas. But I think that was Swedish. All right, what's the next film?
Our next film and our last film is really, it's more so for me. As I already said, I'm about to begin my travels tomorrow to South Korea. So this next film, focus on South Korea, is hopefully everything I'm going to need to know about what to expect in South Korea, because I really only know this much. So I'm excited, and I'm hoping to learn something.
All right, here we go. Enjoy. Miles, the splice broke.
No,
What happened?
I spliced it.
You're fired.
That's a good time.
Now that you've moved 37,000 films, you're fired.
I knew it. I
Alright,
knew
one
it was
second.
coming. You need tape?
Yeah, I got it. Hold on. I got it. Oops. Alright. Almost there. Almost there. Yeah, I think it didn't really splice well because the other one was so vinegared.
Ooh.
Alright. Let's try this. Alright. Let's try it again.
Photography sees with the eye of the camera. It makes records of people, places, and events. Photography shows how things happen. It lets you see the world about you right here in your classroom. It is your window on the world. Now Kodak, through photography, brings you this edition of the Screen News Digest.
The United States has requested this meeting, as I stated in my letter to you, Mr. President, of yesterday, to consider the grave threat to peace which the authorities of North Korea have brought about by their increasingly dangerous and aggressive military actions in violation of the Korean Armistice Agreement of 1953, of the United Nations Charter, and of international law.
Korea, land of the morning calm, has a recorded history that dates back to 57 BC and a search for peace and freedom that is almost as old. The Korean people have long been the pawns of aggressive neighbors. First the Chinese, and then at the turn of the 20th century, the Japanese. During World War II, at the Potsdam Conference, England, America, and Russia agreed that Korea should be liberated from Japan and become a free and independent nation. The 38th parallel of latitude was fixed as the line dividing the Soviet and American occupation of the Korean peninsula after its liberation. With war's end, the United Nations called for free elections to unite divided Korea into a single country. A UN commission to supervise the elections was welcomed into South Korea, but denied admission to the North. And so South Korea formed its own government, with a veteran freedom fighter, Syngman Rhee, as its first president. Free and independent, the infant nation prospered at peace. Within a year, all American occupation troops were withdrawn. Meanwhile, a North Korean People's Republic had been formed in the Soviet zone, and it claimed jurisdiction over all of Korea. While the peaceful people in the South labored to build a nation, their neighbors in the North watched, waited, and then struck. June 25th, 1950, South Korea is attacked by communist legions from the North. Once again, a people who have suffered so much are forced to endure even more. The young and innocent are caught up in a war that they do not understand and yet must suffer through. The United Nations responds quickly to the North Korean attack. With Russia absent, the Security Council authorizes UN military action against the aggressors. General Douglas MacArthur is placed in command of the international force. The World War II hero is 70 years old, respected, revered. The UN military force is made up of volunteer detachments from 18 nations. It is the first such peacekeeping army mobilized for action by the World Organization. American troops form the backbone of the UN Army, and the GIs, as in the dark early days of World War II, must suffer defeat and retreat. The Allied forces are pushed into a shrinking beachhead in the southeast corner of Korea. The battle seems lost, and then MacArthur conceives and executes a bold, brilliant plan. An amphibious invasion of Incheon, far behind the enemy lines. The attack is a military masterpiece. The general has turned the tide of the war with one daring stroke. The communists are caught off guard and off balance. As the UN forces storm ashore, the North Koreans in the south are isolated, cut off, forced into a frantic retreat. The communists fight fiercely, but futilely, to hold the South Korean capital of Seoul. Within 2 weeks, the enemy is put to rout, and the UN flag flies in triumph. Then MacArthur makes a fateful decision. The general sends United Nations forces across the 38th parallel and toward the communist Chinese border. The move is made with American and UN approval, but it brings criticism of MacArthur. In October 1950, the general flies to Wake Island for his first and only meeting with President Harry Truman. MacArthur is under fire for making decisions, taking actions that his critics say are political and not military. The two men and their advisors confer privately for several hours in seeming harmony. But the differences between the general and the commander-in-chief are unresolved. The conflict between military authority and civilian control remains undecided. And when so-called communist Chinese volunteers intervene in Korea, the general is attacked anew. He is to blame, his critics charge, for not accurately forecasting Red China's intention. As Americans once again retreat, MacArthur speaks out forcefully, uncompromisingly, for the military decisions that he feels are necessary to defeat the enemy. The great controversy between general and president grows sharper, more bitter, as the war settles into a stalemate, and snow-swept Korea becomes a modern Valley Forge. In April 1951, Truman relieves MacArthur. The president explains,
I believe that we must try to limit the war to Korea for these vital reasons: to make sure that the precious lives of our fighting men are not wasted, to see that the security of our country and the free world is not needlessly jeopardized, and to prevent a third world war. A number of events have made it evident that General MacArthur did not agree with that policy. I have therefore considered it essential to relieve General MacArthur so that there would be no doubt or confusion as to the real purpose and aim of our policy. It was with the deepest personal regret that I found myself compelled to take this action. General MacArthur is one of our greatest military commanders, but the cause of world peace is much more important than any individual.
coming before Congress, the general makes his defense. The communist threat, he says, will one day imperil all of Southeast Asia.
I have from the beginning believed that the Chinese communist support of the North Koreans was the dominant one. Their interests are at present parallel to those of the Soviet. But I believe that the aggressiveness recently displayed, not only in Korea, but also in Indochina and Tibet, and pointing potentially toward the south, reflects predominantly the same lust for the expansion of power which has animated every would-be conqueror since the beginning of time.
The fighting continues in Korea for 2 years more, with neither side able to achieve a military victory. The front stabilizes near the 38th parallel as truce talks begin. While the diplomats talk, men must fight and die. More than 50,000 American servicemen lose their lives, and another 100,000 are wounded in the long months of combat and conflict. At Panmunjom on July 25, 1953, representatives of the United Nations and North Korea meet to sign the armistice that will end the costly struggle. The communists arrive first. The UN delegation is headed by General William K. Harrison of the United States, who will sign the agreement for all of the countries represented in the Allied military force. Under the terms of the armistice, all hostilities are to end 12 hours after the agreement is signed. In addition, a demilitarized zone, 2.5 miles wide, is to be set up between the two Koreas, and an international political conference is to be held to discuss the future status of the divided land. A communist attempt to unite Korea by force has been thwarted. And the aggressor has paid a price for his failure. While the communists annex a part of South Korean territory at one end of the truce line, they surrender an even greater area at the other. The guns, as agreed, fall silent across the Korean front in the summer of 1953. There is a truce, but never peace. GIs remain on their side of the demilitarized zone, while the North Koreans, within sight and sound of the Americans, keep their own vigil. For weeks, months, years, the sentries walk and wait.
when they can, strike. An American jeep is ambushed and 3 U.S. soldiers are killed by a communist suicide squad that crosses into South Korea. An unarmed plane is shot down near the demilitarized zone, with the loss of still another American life. U.S. protests many times go ignored and unanswered. But there are also times when the communists cooperate with the American authorities. In 1958, when a U.S. pilot is shot down after straying over North Korean territory, the captured airman's return is negotiated without incident. The pilot's error is one of more than 4,000 alleged violations on both sides that mar the first 10 years of the armistice agreement. Not all confrontations are as peaceful and orderly. A routine meeting at Panmunjom erupts into a pushing and shoving match between communist officials and American MPs. For a few ugly moments, there is the threat of a major incident. In this case, bloodshed is avoided, but deep-seated hostility, tension, hatred remain. And so it is that 15 years after the armistice, American troops must still remain alert and on guard along the 150 miles of the demilitarized zone. As the United States' involvement in Vietnam has grown deeper, the harassment along the truce line has grown greater. Communist infiltrators triple in number in 1967, despite increased border patrols by augmented American military units. In addition to stepped-up ground reconnaissance, the United States sends more aircraft into the skies to look for any signs of a new communist military buildup in North Korea. And early in 1968, the Navy sends an electronic intelligence ship into the area. The ship, the USS Pueblo, is seized by North Korean patrol boats. The captain, Lloyd M. Butcher, and his crew of 82 men are interned when the Pueblo reaches the North Korean port city of Wonsan. The incident triggers tighter and stricter security measures along the DMZ. A new cloud hangs over Korea, the Far East, Asia. A new threat imperils the search for peace and freedom in a land that for 20 centuries has known so little of either.
The Screen News Digest, Living History in the Classroom, has been brought to you by the Eastman Kodak Company.
Bummer, dude. So he only went by titles. So, and I basically said yesterday, I was like, go through one of the storage units and pull a bunch of films that you think you'd like to show based on the titles. So, there you go.
I just know that, you know, in addition to bathing suit, toiletries, I also should probably pack some body armor.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. So that's
well,
fun.
I'm excited for you and your trip. Korea is actually not as dire as it is portrayed there. And you're actually going to Japan too, right?
I am, for 2 weeks.
Wow. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
Yes. Somebody said, good luck, Miles. This is the environment you are entering. So, yeah, all right. He's braced himself for that. But let us virtually, let's give Miles a round of applause for doing all that work. He did a lot of work. He cleaned out, him and others, of course. Mari, my other intern, also cleaned out the basement, but also set up shelving units in all these storage units, moved stuff within his car, did amazing stuff. So thank you so much for everything that you've done for AV Geeks. And you know, I'd love to keep him around after the fact, but a little tight with the money. But if I did have an in-source of money, you would still be an employee because of your great work, and everybody loves you, even though I think you've only been on here twice. I think the other time was just photos. But let's see, how much time do we have left? Let's fill it out with a kind of palate cleanser that's not related to war or people dying. It is Life in the Deciduous Forest.
Wow.
Enjoy.
Bye, everybody.
In the eastern United States, there are patches of woods, remains of the once great deciduous forest that extended from Great Lakes to the Carolinas. In this region, there are sub-zero temperatures in winter and near tropic heat in summer, and so the life of the forest must have a means of surviving this drastic variation in climate. Birds from the evergreen regions far to the north, like the crossbills, winter in the forest, feeding on seeds. With the coming of spring, the annual cycle of renewed life becomes apparent in the woods. Trees are without leaves until the sun warms the forest floor, melting the layer of frost at winter time. Although most life forms have lain dormant during the cold weather, some animals, like the deer, active all winter, have survived on food left over from last summer's production. The first signs of new life appear on the forest floor. Often before the snow has gone, the skunk cabbage appears among the leaf litter. The same warmth and light that makes the flowers grow rouses the bees. Bloodroot blooms in the longer days. Replenishing their stores of nectar and pollen, the bees unknowingly assist in the pollination of flowers. A tortoiseshell butterfly, which has wintered over as an adult, visits hepatica blossoms. Spring beauty carpets the forest floor, and the chipmunk awakens from his hibernation. Above the floor, in the plants spawn to the warmth of spring. The spicebush flowers. Berry branches leaf out. In the herbaceous layer, violets bloom in the full light of the leafless woods. Dutchman's breeches. Jack in the pulpit. In this period before the leaves open on the trees, the flowers forming the herbaceous layer are most spectacular. Dogtooth violet or yellow adder's tongue. Many early spring flowers, like the trillium, cram their entire season's growth into this brief sun-drenched period. Squirrel corn blooms. Above the herbaceous and shrub layers, the nuthatch and the red-headed woodpecker, foraging in bark crevices for insects, now find food more easily. Birds like the mourning dove, which moves south to escape the worst of winter, return with the spring. Cowbirds arrive early. In this upper layer, the beech tree is one of the first to open its protective bud scales and expose its leaves. The tulip tree's leaves were packed in the buds last fall. The maples leaf out, adding another color and texture to the changing fabric of the forest. As the new leaves expand and shade the lower layers, the trout lily goes to seed, and the white trillium fades. Some of the growth that has started in the sunny forest will die for lack of light as the new leaves above expand. Maple seedlings can tolerate shade. This gives them an advantage in the lower layers of the forest. As the green leaves develop, food manufacture begins. Green plants of all forest layers take in carbon dioxide from the air, water and nutrients from the soil, light energy from the sun, and in a process called photosynthesis, manufacture the basic food for all life. The green leaves are the base of the food chain. Herbivorous insects eat leaves. Many kinds of caterpillars, the larvae of moths and butterflies, eat various kinds of plants, spending the whole summer devouring leaves and growing. Other insects have been developing all summer. The walking stick feeds most actively at night on tree leaves. At maturity, it's about 4 inches long, but only 1/8 of an inch wide, and the resemblance to a twig has helped it survive. Katydids are also herbivorous insects. Some are pink, but the more common ones are green. Many forest birds obtain food which was originally plant material by eating herbivorous insects. The upper story of the forest is the range of the oriole. The wood pewee also feeds in the upper layers. Its food is flying insects caught in midair. The red-headed woodpecker builds its nest hole high in a tree. It has specially adapted feet, tail, and tongue, as well as bill and skull formation. Nestlings will eat their weight in insect food each day. The prothonotary warbler favors clearings near water and nests in an old woodpecker hole. The wood thrush seeks the seclusion of the young trees of the lower forest layers. The yellow warbler finds both food and shelter in the low shrubs and bushes. A variety of insects is eaten by the towhee that feeds close to the forest floor. In all layers of the forest community, from the floor to the upper story, green leaves form the base of each food chain. Herbivores eat the leaves and are in turn eaten by carnivores. Trees provide both food and shelter, the two factors that make the forest community possible. The leaves of the upper story create a translucent cover over the woods beneath from the hot summer sun, slowing evaporation of moisture, maintaining a relatively humid environment. Rain is vital to a forest. Vast amounts of water are needed for growing and making food by photosynthesis. The leaves of the canopy break the force of falling rain, holding some moisture on their surfaces and letting the rest drip slowly to repeat the action on the leaves below. The rain drips slowly down among the ground plants to be soaked up by the loose mulch of dead leaves and litter of the forest floor. Drops are held on the leaves to fall to the ground long after the rainstorm has passed by. When a tree dies, it continues to be an integral part of the forest community. It's a support for vines, food and shelter for wood-boring insects. A predator of one of these wood-boring insects is the ichneumon wasp. With a 4-inch ovipositor, the female ichneumon penetrates through bark and wood to lay its egg on the insect larva. When trees are blown down by the wind, the shallow-rooted base is tipped up, creating shelter under it. The part of the forest floor that was shaded by the tree leaves becomes exposed to sunlight. Plants which had been suppressed by forest shade grow rapidly in these islands of light. Plants best adapted to compete for the available light and space will dominate the community. The substance of a tree is the result of many years of growth. Products of photosynthesis in its leaves are now stored in the wood. Decay is the use of these stored elements by the living community of the forest floor. The fallen tree is gradually reduced to soil. In the damp contact with the forest floor, some of the first organisms of decay are fungi. When a fungus spore germinates, it produces a thread-like filament which grows, secreting enzymes that attack wood, breaking it down into simpler substances which are absorbed. The bracket, or toadstool or mushroom that appears on the surface, is a short-lived reproductive portion of the fungus plant. Slime mold fungi are also agents of decay. The mining of carpenter ants allows entry of other organisms. Some invertebrates, like these beetle larvae, are adapted to feed on the hard wood of fallen logs and reduce the solid structure to tiny fragments, exposing a vastly enlarged surface to other organisms. This is one step in converting the hard substance of a fallen tree to soil and nutrients, which can be used by other living things. When decaying agents have softened the wood, colonies of horned Physalis beetles can move in to feed and reduce the log still further. Slugs and snails also convert plant materials to more simple nutrients. Herbivores are themselves eaten by other animals. White-lipped snails and wood snails serve as food for larger creatures. The millipede, an animal that lives in the soft, decayed wood or soil, is one of a vast host of creatures that feed on the forest floor debris. Bacteria, fungi, and animals of the forest floor community convert back to basic nutrients tons of fallen material each year. In addition to reducing plant debris, herbivores are also food for many carnivores. Microscopic animals of the floor are the food of the tiny red mite. The cicada spends most of its life in the soil as a nymph. During its brief adult period, it lays its eggs in trees. When the eggs hatch, the nymphs fall to the ground and enter the soil where they develop. The adults may be preyed upon by the giant cicada killer wasp. The cicada is paralyzed and carried to the wasp's burrow. Inside the burrow, an egg will be laid on it. When the egg hatches, the wasp larva will feed on the cicada. Larger animals are eaten by the forest amphibians, such as Jefferson's salamander. The red eft form of the newt, and the American toad. The 7-inch long skink is a reptile which feeds actively on small animals. A most voracious predator is the shrew. It must eat every hour and feeds on snails, insects, salamanders, and may even take larger prey. It prefers to move about just under the loose layer of dead leaves. This affords some protection from its predators. like the screech owl, which hunts at night for mammals as well as invertebrates. The most numerous mammal of the forest floor is the deer mouse. Winter and summer, it is busy scouring the forest litter for nuts and seeds, which it sometimes stores. Its eyes are adapted for night vision. Mice are the preferred diet of the long-eared owl. The chipmunk is a creature of the forest floor, but it can climb trees. Invading the upper layers of the forest, chipmunks occasionally eat young birds or eggs, although their usual diet consists of seeds, fruits, and berries, and some invertebrates. The raccoon also eats both plants and animals, foraging for a great variety of food at night. Deer are browsing mammals, which eat the twigs and leaves of a number of food plants that are low enough to reach. Fawns of the white-tailed deer display excellent camouflage. The spotted pattern of the coat blends with the sun-dappled forest floor. As the season matures, plants produce seeds. Fruits of the jack-in-the-pulpit will turn bright red. Small seeds are food of the goldfinch. Even the young are fed seeds, softened first by the adults. Raspberries contain several seeds in each berry. Grapes are borne in generous bunches. Baneberry fruits, called doll's eyes, are dramatically displayed. The red-berried elder provides fruits that are eaten by the cedar waxwing. In its wanderings, it may discharge a living seed and thus assist in establishing new plants. As the days shorten with the approach of winter, squirrels begin to gather the ripening nuts from the trees. Some of these hoarded seeds will not be found again by the squirrels, and they may grow into trees. The trees themselves respond to the changing season. Green chlorophyll breaks down in the leaves, and new or previously masked pigments are seen. Deciduous means falling, and the leaves fall from the trees. About 2 tons per acre fall to the forest floor, providing a layer of insulation which shelters much light. The flow of sap is reduced, and thus the trees withstand the winter. Although the forests of eastern North America have been greatly disturbed by man, the patches that still stand show the complex relationships between living things in all layers of the forest community. As the scene changes with the season, each plant and animal contributes to the continuing rejuvenation of the forest. In this environment, dominated by the trees, which impose the annual cycle of light and shade, each living thing has become adapted to survive.
All right, was that a palate cleanser for everybody? Did we get all the bear hunting footage and the black and white footage of battle out? Yeah. thanks for watching today, and thanks for celebrating Miles with me. He's been quite a great intern, and maybe one day we'll figure out a way to give him like a full-time job. We're not there yet, but maybe after we dedicate to getting the archive like as a real film archive and all that, maybe we'll be able to do it. I don't know. We'll see. If you like what you saw, or at least kind of like the concept of what we do here, today's films, maybe not your cup of tea, but I guarantee you, like sometime this week, we'll have something you'll go like, that was awesome. Give us a thumbs up, a like, a subscribe. You can also support us with the super thanks button, or go to ko-fi.com/avgeeks or patreon.com/avgeeks. Patreon is a really great place for kind of what I call a subscription tip jar, where you can send us a couple of bucks every month, and that adds up. It actually pays for one of our storage units, and that is very much appreciated because we need it, because we got 7. So everybody have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you tomorrow on Wednesday. Everybody take care, and keep cool.